miles. In fact, they used to send up smoke signals to warn of approaching strangers.
Oh.
Yeah, and then out of that bluff there poured several springs so that the Sauks had nice, clear, fresh water. And then the rapids from the Rock River gave them an abundant supply of fresh fish, and they had game and waterfowl. Do you know this was their happy hunting ground?
They look so happy. Why did they leave there?
Well, Rebecca, that's the story we're about to tell you.
Oh, Shenandoah, I long to see you. Away, you rolling river. Oh, Shenandoah, I long to see you. Away, we're bound to go across the wide Missouri. Years since last I've seen you. Away, rolling river. 'Tis 7 long years since last I've seen you. Away, we're bound to go across the wide Missouri.
Tonight, we invite you to step through the twilight of today and journey back with us to another summer's twilight many years ago. The year is 1832, a time when our flag had only 24 stars, a time when Wisconsin was part of a vast area known only as Michigan Territory and was an almost impenetrable wilderness. A time when this part of Wisconsin was unoccupied, except for a scattering of Winnebago Indians, when Milwaukee was a mere trading post, and Chicago, then called Fort Dearborn, was populated by about 200 settlers, and the only other white settlements nearby were Fort Winnebago at Portage and Fort Crawford at Prairie du Chien. For generations, the Indians had hunted, fished, and lived on these lands. But in the late 1820s, white settlers, moving westward in ever-increasing numbers, began staking out homesteads on the Indians' ancestral lands in Illinois. They forced the Indians to leave their homes and move westward across the Mississippi into uninhabited lands. The Sauk Indians lived in a large village called Sockanack, where Rock Island, Illinois is today. Sockanack was then one of the largest Indian villages in North America. Chief Keokuk, the head of the Sauk Nation, believing it best not to fight the whites, moved his people to Iowa country. But his rival, Blackhawk, the 65-year-old Sauk war chief, disagreed with Keokuk. Blackhawk believed it was better to fight the whites who were illegally taking over their lands, and hundreds of Sauks agreed with him. In the spring of 1832, when the Sauks returned from their winter hunting expedition in what is now Iowa and Kansas, they found white settlers had moved into their village, torn down their lodges, plowed up their cemeteries, and taken over their land. Their war chief, Blackhawk, angered at what the white settlers had done to their once beautiful village, gathered 400 warriors and 1,200 women, children, and old people, and went on the warpath, causing panic among the towns and villages of northern Illinois.
The governor of Illinois was alarmed and hastily called up the state militia, and the United States Army dispatched General Henry Atkinson from Jefferson Barracks, Missouri, with 500 troops of the Frontier Army. When the Army and the Illinois militia moved into the field, June 15th, it numbered about 4,000 men. It is now July 9th, 1832. And day is coming to an end here at recently built Fort Koshkonong, headquarters of General Atkinson's Frontier Army. For days, General Atkinson's troops have been searching in vain for fresh signs of Blackhawk and his warriors, who in recent weeks had moved up the Rock River and were believed to be in hiding in the marshes around Lake Koshkonong. Most of General Atkinson's 4,000 troops are living in tents outside the fort.
Troops approaching the fort!
Can you make them out?
Let's see now. I think it's... Yes, it is. It's Captain Early's spy company reporting, and just in time for retreat 2.
Attention! Present! Up! Order! Up!
One moment, Captain Early. Before you dismiss your men, I'd like to say a few words.
Yes, sir, General Atkinson.
At ease, men. For many days now, you've been going out on scouting missions. You've scoured the countryside in every direction, searching for Blackhawk. You've sloshed through the torrential rain, the tangled underbrush, and the mosquito-laden swamps. You've wrestled with our supply wagons, mired down in the muck and mud. I'm well aware that you and your horses are weary and that our food supplies are nearly exhausted.
Yep.
Well, gentlemen, you've done all of that, and we still have not found Blackhawk. Our situation demands that we change tactics immediately. We've got to reduce forces so that we can move more quickly through the swamps and the forest. Therefore, Captain Early, effective tomorrow, July 10th, you and your company of volunteer scouts are being mustered out. The mustering out papers will be ready in the morning. Now, further, I've ordered General Henry and General Alexander and Colonel Dodge to march their troops to Fort Winnebago, there to pick up fresh supplies and to return here to Fort Koshkonong without delay. Captain, your scouting mission has been of great assistance, and I regret having to muster out your troops. However, our situation demands it. You may all return to your homes in Illinois with the satisfaction that you did everything that could have been asked of you. Captain, you may dismiss your troop.
Thank you, General Atkinson. It's a pleasure serving in command, sir. Dismissed!
Johnson, I think we need to get the mustering out papers ready, and then I'll need some other information.
Where you old son of a gun?
Abe Lincoln of
How you
Dayton.
doing? Oh, gosh, but it's good to see you, Willie. When did you get here?
About 2 days ago, Abe. I'm with Colonel Fry's 2nd Regiment. We've been scouting around the area. What outfit are you in?
I'm with Captain Early's Scouts. Say, Willie, when did you enlist?
Oh, about 3 weeks ago. I got a week to go before my 30 days are up and I can go home. Say, Abe, how many times have you enlisted anyway? It was just last April you left New Salem. I thought you'd be back in New Salem by now.
Like a darn fool, this is my 3rd enlistment in the last 3
Oh,
months.
boy, you keep that up, you'll get to be a general.
I seem to be going the other direction. I was a captain my first time and a private my last 2 enlistments. I reckon it's about time I call it quits.
Say, Abe, do you still like to wrestle?
Well, you know me, I always did enjoy a good scrap. I still tangle every now and then.
Well, how about a wrestling match? We got a man here who hasn't lost a match. I bet he could throw you.
Well, I suppose if you fellas insist, I guess I'll have to give it a try. I'm not making any promises, though.
Gather around, men. Here we have 2 of the best, strongest wrestlers in the camp. Here's your chance to make some money.
Let me go, will ya? Hey. Hey. I got my money on this guy here. Come on, Thompson. Come on here. Come on, let's go. Come on.
Come on, Abe.
Come on. Tony,
look out.
Hey, what are you doing?
Oh, no.
Tony,
Don't let him flip you, Abe. Look out. Oh, jeez.
No, hold on, boys. This fella threw me fairly. What's more, I think he could do it again. Why, he could have thrown a grizzly. No, I mean it. I mean it. I'm Abe Lincoln. Done a lot of wrestling in my day, and by golly, I have to admit it. You're the toughest I've ever come across.
My name's Thompson. I was darn lucky to win.
Yeah, that's
Such
true.
hit me there several times, Lincoln. You're a very good wrestler. I'm glad we don't have to square off again.
Yeah, I agree.
I was told he was tough, Abe. It was
Yeah.
a close match, though, just like I thought it would be. Say, Abe, what are you doing here anyway? I thought you and the rest of the Illinois regulars were up the Bark River at Burnt Village.
That we were, Willie. But we'd heard that Blackhawk and his band were on an island this end of Lake Koshkonong. So we spent the day wading through the swamps, fighting off mosquitoes big enough to carry off a rabbit, only to find a deserted Indian camp. Then I come back here and I lose a wrestling match. And to top it all off, George Harrison and I discover that some dad-blasted varmint had stolen our horses. So now I guess we'll be walking back to New Salem, because there ain't any extra horses.
Confound this crazy war.
Yeah.
I sure hope we find Blackhawk soon. I've got a lot of work to do back at my farm.
And the way President Jackson's carrying on, you'd think Blackhawk is a prize capture of the century.
Well then, why isn't he out here up to his armpits in swamp mud? I swear, it's like trying to catch a shadow the way those Indians can disappear in the trees. I tell you, it's mighty discouraging always getting to be where Blackhawk's supposed to be, only to find he's been and gone again.
Got to remember, old Andrew Jackson is feeling the pressures of this war, too. Why, news of this war is traveling to such wild rumors that settlers are in a state of panic. Even Michigan, Indiana, and Missouri have called up their militia.
Did you hear about the Indian Creek Massacre? 2 girls, Rachel and Sylvia Hall, were carried off by some Indians after their entire family and several neighbors were massacred. We came across one of Blackhawk's deserted camps a little above Turtle Creek. There looked like 2 young women, possibly the Hall girls, had been tied to a tree and a dance performed around them. Couldn't tell what happened to them, though. It's things like this that make me look forward to the scalps I'm going to take from Blackhawk and his band when we catch them.
Yeah, but I heard that those weren't Sox that made that attack. I heard there were some renegade Potawatomi out for revenge. I also understand that General Atkinson has offered a $2,000 reward for the safe return of the 2 Hall girls. Let's hope that this can spare their lives. Say, Willie, you too, Thompson. I'm all mud and sweat from our march and that wrestling match. How about we go down to the river and clean up a bit, huh?
I could sure use it, even if it ain't Saturday night.
Oh, yeah, we all could stand a good bath. Say, Abe, what are you planning on doing when you get back to New Salem?
Well, you'll probably laugh, Willie, but I think I'm going to get into politics. I'm going to run for the legislature this fall.
I always thought you'd be good at politics, Abe.
Thanks.
Just don't forget me when you get to be governor.
I appreciate your confidence, Willie, but you're forgetting one important detail. I have to be elected first.
That shouldn't be a problem at all, Abe. You know everybody in New Salem, and they'll all vote for you.
I hope you're right. The election's only a few weeks off, so I got to get back to New Salem and make some speeches fast. Oh.
Well, men, General Atkinson just received word from our scouts that Blackhawk has a new camp not far from here. We'll be off again
great.
tomorrow to track him down.
God, geez,
Not
it's my
me.
company. I had a fishing trip planned for tomorrow. Say, Lieutenant, I think our scouts are listening to the wrong Indians. All they do is send us on wild goose chases.
Let's hope we find those Indians tomorrow. Something's got to happen, and soon.
Well, Willie, I wish you luck on finding old Blackhawk. I'm hiking back to New Salem in the morning with George Harrison. How about that swim, guys?
Drinking one night on the air, hi, boys. Oh, the air was rising, and the whiskey's getting low. I scarcely think we'll get a drink till we get to Buffalo. Till we get to Buffalo. The cook we had on board the deck stood 6 feet in her stocks.
Hey, get that.
Her hand was like an elephant's ear, and breath would open the locks. Oh, the air I was rising, and the whiskey's getting low. And I scarcely think I'll get a drink to get to Buffalo. Till we get to Buffalo. Girls are in the Police Gazette. The crew is all in jail. And I'm the only thing on who's left until this day. Oh, here I was rising, and the whiskey's getting low. Scarcely think I'll get a drink till I get to Buffalo. Till we get to Buffalo. All right.
Hit that bottle from.
You guys think you got troubles now?
You're gonna have trouble.
Wait till you hear this.
Oh. Where you go tell it?
Now, pay attention.
Boy, what a bad angle I got. Yeah.
General Orders number 15.
In any condition to read.
The great disorder in the brigade occasioned by the men quitting their places in the line and scattering over the country.
Who did that?
Renders it absolutely necessary to inflict punishment on everyone who violates orders in that particular. Regimental commanders will require that every man shall keep his place in the ranks if the individual is able to march, and if not, he will obtain permission to march in the rear of the army. By order of General Atkinson. And that ain't all. Listen to this one. General Orders number 16.
There's another one.
The frequent, unauthorized firing of arms in and about the vicinity of the encampments of the different corps of the Army now in the field compels the commanding general to bid a practice so dangerous and derogatory. Give me that. Here's my gun.
Hey, get that gun away.
To forgive a practice so derogatory to the military character of all organized troops. No officer or private, therefore, will fire his rifle again in camp or on the march without permission, one of these, without permission or an order from the commanding officer of his regiment.
You're kidding.
By order of the commanding general, Henry Atkinson. What's his name? Here. How do you like them apples?
While the weary troops were wading around in the marshes bordering Lake Koshkonong, trying to locate Blackhawk's hiding place, the clever old chief, under cover of darkness, had left what is now called Blackhawk Island and traveled with his suffering and starving people up the Rock River to the area south of Horicon Marsh. Blackhawk and his people have just arrived at the village of the Potawatomi chief, Kewaskum, and are being greeted by the chief.
My great Potawatomi nation welcomes the great Sauk chief, Blackhawk, great Winnebago prophet, Chief White Cloud, and Whirling Thunder, son of Blackhawk, to our village. Your people are starving and very tired. They have traveled a great distance with very little food. Our food is scarce here now, but we will share what we have with you. But tell me, why did your people leave their village and travel up the Rock River to our land?
I, Chief Blackhawk, and my people are indebted to great Potawatomi Chief Kewaskum for your kindness. You are a great nation, much like the Sauks. Our story is not a happy one. Our village was near where the Rock River flows into the Great River. It was a beautiful place. Our cornfields and our fields gave us much. Corn, beans, pumpkins, squash. Our orchards gave us many kinds of fruit and berries. We drank cool, clear water from the many springs that bubbled up in the earth nearby. It was the resting place of our fathers. We had many fine lodges.
Trouble began many winters ago. 5 Sauk chief went to San Luis and touched the quill to paper, giving the white man the land of all the Sauk nation for some white man's wampum.
I say, you cannot sell land. You might as well sell the wind, the air, the water. Land belongs to all the people. The only thing you can sell is what you can carry away.
I agree with you, Chief Blackhawk. Yet I cannot believe your chiefs would sell your homeland without a meeting of the tribal council. How did it happen?
I was a young chief then, but I shall never forget what happened. The year was 1804, as the white man measures time. There was a little fur-trading village along the great river named Queve, just above San Luis. One night, the traders had a white man's dance there. Many of our braves took their daughters. One of our braves had a beautiful daughter who loved to dance. He brought her that night, and then he began to drink fire water.
Now honor your partner. Your corners all wave to the girl across the hall. That's all there is, the end of the call. Okay, nice dancing, everybody. Nice dancing.
Sebastian, it is good to see you, my old friend.
Ah, Pierre, it's good to see you, too. How's your wife and your family?
Ah, they're all fine. They're at that table there.
Oh, yes, I see them. Such a fine family.
Mon ami, let us have a drink here. It's been some time since we've talked.
Say, Pierre, what do you think about our being part of the United States now?
Ah, I am not sure. It is all so confusing. Things change so rapidly these days. Sometimes I just don't understand.
I know how you feel, my friend. Did you hear it happen to me when I was in St. Louis last month?
Ah, I've heard about those St. Louis women. Tell me about it.
That's another story I'll tell you about later. What I wanted to say was, I went down there to sell some of my furs, and when I arrived in St. Louis, the Spanish flag was flying from the government building, as it always has. But, my friend, the next day they took down the Spanish flag and raised the French flag in its place. And then the very next day they had another ceremony. They took down the French flag and ran up the United States flag. Medea, I belong to 3 countries in 3 days, and I never left St. Louis.
I tell you, Sebastian, these are crazy times we live in.
Father, I want to go home.
Good.
Take me back to the village now.
What's wrong, my little princess? You begged me to bring you to the dance, and now you want to leave so soon. Tell me what happened.
The dance is beautiful, my father, but it is that terrible mannequin. Oh, the one they call Jacques Leroux. He tried to... Oh, take me home.
I warned him the last time. Nobody insults my daughter. Where is he? Leroux, I warned you the last time to stay away from my daughter. She doesn't even like you, and now you insulted her again. I demand an apology right now.
Leave me alone, you old drunken Indian. I'll play with your pretty little daughter anytime I want to.
That was a wonderful dance, my children. You're really getting the idea.
I thought it was fun. Yes, children learn things so much quicker nowadays, it seems.
Well, my children, it's getting late, and it's time we get home. Tomorrow we've got many traps to set.
That's for boys. Come on, we don't like setting.
Oh, well, we have to go set traps.
Watch it!
Watch it!
They arrested our brave and took him to the white man's prison in San Luis. 5 of our chiefs went to San Luis to see if they could purchase his freedom, as was our custom. While they were there, the great white chief, General Harrison, held a big feast. It lasted many suns. They gave our chiefs much fire water to drink. Our chiefs did not know what they were doing. They touched the quill to the white man's paper and sold the land of the Sox without our consent.
A handful of chiefs cannot sell all the land of the Sauk Nation. The whole nation should hear the story at a great powwow. Then decide. White man's paper lies. We Sox did not sell our land.
I understand now why you and your people are angry. That treaty made long ago is false. Indians do not sell land that way, and white man knows it.
For many years after this false treaty, no white men came. We Sox planted our crops in summer. In winter, we crossed the great river on the ice and hunted and trapped in Iowa country. The great Manitou was good to us. Life was good.
2 springs ago, we came back from our winter hunt. We found our beloved Saukenuk full of white people. They had plowed up our fields, destroyed the graves of our fathers, and burned all our fine lodges. They hurt our women and children. We asked them to leave our lands. They said no. They said this is their land now, and that we should go back across the Great River to the Iowa country.
We prepared a war party, but the great Illinois chief sent too many troops. So we decided to go back across the river into Iowa country and join with Chief Keokuk. Last winter, the prophet had a dream. He told us that the Winnebagos, the Ottawas, the Chippewas, the Kickapoos, your own Potawatomi nation, would join us and help us drive the white man from our lands. That even our British friends in Canada would help us. That the white man would see that he was wrong and stop robbing us of our land. So this spring, we crossed the great river back into Illinois to fight for our lands.
But the prophet's dream was untrue. My father was betrayed. Only handfuls of Winnebagos and Potawatomi were ready to fight the white man. Even the prophet's own village was burned to the ground.
I still believe my dream was right. If only the other chiefs had listened to me.
Your dream was a crazy dream, Wabakishik. And it has brought us much suffering. Last winter, we held a great dog feast. We decided we could not fight the white man alone. So we decided that we would move up the Rock River and cross back into Iowa country and join with our other chiefs.
Our warriors were camped along the Kishwaukee River above Dixon's Ferry in Illinois. One of our runners told us that the white troops were in a camp not far away. My father decided to send a message to General Atkinson. We call him White Beaver, telling him we want to pass the peace pipe and surrender and move our nation back to the Iowa country.
Yes, my son. And you know that I sent 3 of our braves to the camp of the Bluecoats with a white flag of truce Then I sent 5 messengers to watch and see what happened. White soldiers, many without uniforms, just white men's clothing, rode out, threw my braves to the ground, and trampled on our flag of truce. Then, seeing our messengers, they rode out and killed 2 of them. I then gave up all hope of surrender and ordered my braves to attack the camp of the bluecoats at once.
Our braves, outnumbered 10 to 1, fought like the Sox of old. The white soldiers' camp was frightened. The troops took to the horse and fled in all directions. We won a great battle.
The story of our victory spread like a prairie fire. Soon, the white villages were full of fear. We took our women and children up the Rock River to Lake Koshkonong and hid them. Then we went on the warpath in Illinois. We attacked and burned many villages, and our warriors got many scalps.
We had only 400 troops. The white man's paper said that we had 4,000 or 5,000. But the great governor of Illinois said too many troops. So we decided to move up the Rock River and rejoin our women and children, then move them to an island in Lake Koshkonong. Soon our food ran out. My people had to eat boiled roots, bark, grass, anything. Many of them became ill. So we came up here. You are good to help us.
Your story is very sad, Great Chief Blackhawk. Our people are sorry for your nation. White man brings much unhappiness. But my brother, we have much land here. You can stay with us.
No, Chief Kewaskum. Tomorrow, we must move into the sunset and go to 4 Lakes country. From there, we will go to the Wisconsin River. I know an island there. We shall get many boats, rafts, canoes, and move to the great river and cross into Iowa country and join with Keokuk and our other chiefs. That is our only hope now. Hear me now, my braves and warriors. These are the medicine bags of our great Sauk chief, Makatukwit, who was the father of our great Sauk nation. They were handed down to our great war chief, Nanamaki, who has been at war with all the nations of the lakes and all the nations of the plains. And these medicine bags have never been disgraced. I and your people expect you to defend them with your lives. Tomorrow, we move into the sunset and try to cross the Father of Waters. White soldiers may find us and try to stop us. If they do, and we must fight, let us fight like Sauk!
Following General Atkinson's orders, Generals Henry and Alexander and Colonel Dodge left Fort Koshkonong and rushed their troops the 70 miles northwest to Fort Winnebago to procure the desperately needed rations for the troops. As our scene opens, General Henry, General Alexander, and Colonel Dodge are having breakfast with John Kinsey, a government agent for the Winnebagos in the area. Kinsey's friend, Pierre Paquette, a fur trader, and White Pawnee, a Winnebago guide, are standing near them.
Have some more breakfast, General Alexander. There's plenty here.
Don't mind if I do, Kinsey. I haven't had a meal like this since I left John Dixon's Ferry down in Illinois a couple weeks ago. Here, Dodge, you better have some more, too.
I reckon I will, sir. That's mighty fine eating. It sure beats that hardtack.
As I was saying, Mr. Kinsey, our men certainly had a harrowing experience last night.
Well, from what you tell me, General Henry, you're fortunate none of your men were killed last night. We heard the roaring and yelling here at the fort. They had all the troops on guard duty for 2 hours. At first, we thought it was an Indian attack. But then we heard it was your horses stampeding, and we breathed easily again.
I'm afraid our men won't breathe easily again for some time. They had the very devil scared out of them. When we left Fort Koshkonong on July 10th, our horses weren't in the best condition. But somehow we made the 70-mile trip through the wilderness in 2 days. When we arrived last night, we turned our horses out to graze. When it grew dark, our men retired to their tents, which were pitched about 3 feet apart.
Last night, some Indians tried to steal our horses. They stampeded about 1,000 of them right through the center of the camp, with our troops asleep on the ground. What a nightmare. Tents, men, munitions, everything was trampled under the stampede.
Yes, but that wasn't the end of it. Our men hadn't fully recovered their senses when the horses turned around and with all the fury of a hurricane came roaring through the camp a second time, spreading havoc everywhere. Many men were bruised and injured, but miraculously no one was killed. But many of the horses suffered broken legs or necks or were killed, and many more were unfit for further service after their 30-mile stampede. In all my years of service, gentlemen, I have never witnessed such an unholy terror caused without gunfire.
I tell you, General Henry, another night like last night, and we'll be lucky to have an army left. I left Fort Koshkonong with 150 mounted troops. Now I couldn't muster 50 men.
I know, Dodge, I know. General Alexander and I each had over 1,000 men and horses when we left. Now we are both down to less than 500.
Well, I have a morale problem. My men have told me that they won't go back the same route, and if we do, they're deserting my battalion for good.
Well, the first thing we have to do is take care of our wounded so we can get on with our mission, which is to take food supplies back to Fort Koshkonong.
You are quite right, General. Mr. Kinsey, are there adequate medical supplies here at the fort? We have scores of wounded men.
We're well equipped for an emergency here. As a matter of fact, we've been expecting an Indian attack for several weeks now. The rumors have been so strong lately that last week I sent my wife and the other women to Fort Howard at Green Bay for safety.
You've been expecting an Indian attack. You don't mean Blackhawk. Is he supposed to be near here?
My friend Pierre is a fur trader in this area. He hears what's going on in all the camps. He knows what all the Indians are up to. Pierre, tell them what you just learned.
I've got good news for my American friends. My Winnebago guide here, White Pawnee, returned last night. He tells me that he visited Blackhawk's camp just 2 days ago.
2 days ago, where?
He told me that the camp was at the rapids of the Rock River, about 30 miles east of here.
30 miles. If that Indian is telling the truth, Blackhawk is just a day's march from here.
Colonel, I'm sure White Pawnee would tell Paquette the truth.
White Pawnee does not lie to me. He knows what would happen to him if he did. No, my friends, he is telling the truth.
Well, gentlemen, if it's true that Blackhawk is near here, we must resupply at once, mount what troops we can, and close on him as soon as possible.
Hold on, General Henry. We can't do that. Our orders are to get provisions and return without delay. And we cannot disobey the orders of our commanding officer.
But, General, the only reason we are in this godforsaken land is to find and defeat Blackhawk. I say hang the orders. Let's go after him, and the sooner the better.
I agree with Dodge, General. My men took quite a beating during that stampede last night, but I'll tell you this. If we can mount 50 men on horseback, we'll be willing to go after Blackhawk.
I'm sure that your intentions are commendable, and I admire your courage. However, I must once again remind you of our orders. Order number 51. Brigadier Generals Alexander and Henry, Brigade of Illinois Volunteers, will march tomorrow morning to Fort Winnebago and draw 12 days' rations of provisions and return to these headquarters without delay. Signed, General Henry Atkinson, commanding. Now, I'm sure that your orders are the same as ours, Colonel Dodge?
Yes, you are quite right, General Alexander. But I noted when you were reading those orders that General Atkins said to return to headquarters without delay. But he didn't specify by what route. I say, let's resupply, head east towards the Rock River, then if we don't find Blackhawk, continue down the river toward Fort Koshkonong.
I refuse to be a part of such a scheme. We were told to return without delay, and that's precisely what I intend to do. I'm not going to risk a court-martial over such a foolhardy adventure.
I'm sorry, General, but I disagree. I firmly believe that if General Atkinson were here, he would want us to close on Blackhawk before he escapes.
Well, if this is your plan, I have nothing more to say. I'll not go off on a wild goose chase. My men are marching to Fort Koshkonong just as soon as we can take care of our wounded and load supplies. I bid you good day. Gentlemen.
I'm very sorry, gentlemen. I never meant to cause friction among you officers. Perhaps you should disregard Paquette's information and go with General Alexander.
No, Mr. Kinsey, you did the proper thing in telling us. General Alexander believes he is correct, according to his strict interpretation. However, as a commander, I feel that it is my first duty in this instance to prevent Blackhawk's escape. To delay now would be foolish. We must attack and attempt to defeat him and end this war. It is imperative, gentlemen, that we demonstrate to the Indians that we are capable of defending this frontier and that the Indians have no choice but to move west peaceably.
I agree, General Henry. This is the closest we've been to Blackhawk. Now is the time to attack. Besides, my men refuse to go back the same old route, and they haven't fought their way through all this wilderness just to turn and run when we are this close to Blackhawk.
Yes. Yes. Good morning, Colonel Smith. How are things coming along?
Excuse me, General Henry, sir, but Alexander has been telling all the officers that you and Colonel Henry plan to disregard General Atkinson's orders and go after Blackhawk. Many of the officers feel that is mistakes, sir, and they refuse to follow you. We have signed this petition, and they asked me to bring it to you at once.
Petition? Are you aware of this petition, Dodge?
I was not, sir.
The undersignment of the 3rd Illinois Militia. I wonder. All right, Colonel Smith. You can tell the officers that, as of now, you and every man who signed this damnable paper are under military arrest.
But, sir,
tomorrow morning, Colonel Collins' regiment is to escort these men back to General Atkinson's headquarters at Fort Koshkonong, where they will each stand trial, after which I am certain you will all be shot for mutiny, insubordination, and disobedience.
You don't understand,
That is
sir.
all, Colonel.
Yes, sir.
I said that is all, Colonel. Dodge, I can't believe my men would do such a cowardly thing.
Excuse me, sir. I was told that I might find Colonel Dodge here.
I'm Colonel Dodge. What can I do for you, Captain?
I am Captain Craig. I have just arrived here with my company of mounted troops from Galena. Your officers told me that you would be happy to hear that we have 65 fresh horses.
Happy? Captain, I'm delighted. You don't know what a godsend this is. General Henry, now there's no doubt in my mind but that we should march for Blackhawk's camp immediately.
How many?
That is all, Captain, and thank you for the good news.
How many effective troops do you believe you can have mounted by tomorrow morning, Colonel Dodge?
Well, let's see. With Captain Craig's 65 fresh horses, plus what I can salvage out of my own battalion, I should be able to mount between 120 and 150 men by morning.
Excellent. I am certain that we can have between 400 and 500 ready in my brigade. With our combined forces, we should be able to mount an effective attack if we can find Blackhawk.
Frankly, General, I think we have a better chance of defeating Blackhawk with the faster-moving mounted troops than our slower-moving foot soldiers of the regular army. I think it's high time the military in Washington woke up to the fact that a modern army must be mobile and capable of mounting a swift attack.
Yes, Dodge, I understand that the Army is forming new units called Mounted Dragoons. I would like to serve in a unit like that.
I would too. It's the only way a modern army can possibly cope with the vastness of this frontier. Now, Paquette, come here a minute. and show us where you think Blackhawk's camp is on this map.
You see Cranberry Lake there? Blackhawk's camp is just a few miles below the lake. He is with Kewaskum, a Potawatomi chief.
What is it this time, Colonel Smith?
Excuse me, General Henry, sir, but these are some of the men who signed the paper, and we want you to know we did not fully realize what we were doing when we signed it. Sir, we ask your forgiveness and beg, yes, implore you, sir, to please burn the paper and forget the incident ever occurred. We promise you from now on you will not find more devoted officers.
Well now, gentlemen, this is the best news I've heard all day. I couldn't believe that men in my command would refuse to obey orders. It grieved me deeply. Do you men all feel this way now?
Yes, sir.
That you would help me catch old Blackhawk and end this war?
Yes, sir.
Well then, gentlemen, I say let's just forget this little misunderstanding and let's get on with our business.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, General. All right, that is all, men.
While Blackhawk and his band of hundreds of weary, starving Indians were preparing to head west toward the Mississippi, General Atkinson and his troops were still at Fort Koshkonong on the Rock River, impatiently awaiting the arrival of Generals Henry and Alexander with the sorely needed supplies from Fort Winnebago. While waiting, the troops had been scouting the entire area, searching for signs of Blackhawk.
Looks like the rain's letting up, Captain Lowe. Skies will be clear tonight.
I sure hope so, Lieutenant. I think it's rained 12 days out of the last 2 weeks. All my uniforms are mildewed and my boots are rotting. I've never seen so much mud and rain.
Yes, the men are even complaining that their rifles are rusting. But I think the biggest misery is the swarms of mosquitoes and horseflies.
That's right.
Say, Captain, I wonder what's bothering General Atkinson. Just look at him there. He's been pacing back and forth with that letter for 15 or 20 minutes now. Must be bad news from Washington.
I'm afraid so, Lieutenant. He's been getting a lot of pressure from back east, from the President, the War Department, and the newspapers to end this miserable war so that the frontier can settle down to peace and quiet again. The trouble is, the people back east, including President Jackson, don't realize the miserable conditions we're fighting under out here. I tell you what, Johnson, let's ask General Atkinson what's bothering him.
Fine with me, Captain.
Good evening, General.
Good evening, gentlemen. I'm glad you stopped by. I was going to send for you anyway, Lieutenant Johnson. I want to dictate a letter to send to General Winfield Scott.
I'm ready now, sir.
Excellent.
Have you heard from General Scott, sir?
Yes, I have. A messenger arrived a short time ago with this letter. President Jackson thinks it's taking us too long to finish off Blackhawk. So he sent Winfield Scott and 9 companies of regular Army troops all the way from Virginia to relieve us. Think of it. Scott and his troops have arrived at Fort Dearborn, Chicago. An epidemic of cholera has broken out among his troops. So far, he's lost 120 men, and he will be detained while the troops recover. We've got our work cut out for us, gentlemen. Sir. We have spent too much sweat and trouble on this campaign to stand calmly aside and let someone from back east come in and finish our job. My entire career is at stake. We don't have much time, but we simply have to get Blackhawk before Scott and his troops catch up with us.
We can do it, General. I know we can. Now that we have a smaller army and are traveling with light packs, we can move faster than the Indians. We can beat Blackhawk at his own game.
This is what I'm hoping. What is that? Yeah, gentlemen. At ease.
General, I'm Adjutant Merriman of General Henry's Brigade. And
Yes?
This is Adjutant Woodbridge of Colonel Dodge's Battalion. This is our Winnebago guide, Little
How do you do?
Thunder.
Well, what is the news from Fort Winnebago? Are the troops returning soon with our provisions?
Sir, General Alexander's brigade is on the way and should be here at any moment.
Excellent. Alexander's coming.
Good. However, Generals Henry and Dodge heard that Blackhawk was east of Fort Winnebago and went after him.
They did what? Henry and Dodge went after him? Their orders were to return here at once.
But, sir, This is our great news.
Yes?
Generals Henry and Dodge have located Blackhawk's camp a few miles east of here, and they went after him.
By Jehoshaphat, at last, now that's the news we've been waiting for. Now we can finish off Blackhawk before Scott and his troops arrive. What's Blackhawk's location? How far behind him are Henry and Dodge?
Sir, the trail is about 10 miles north of here and heads west towards Four Lakes country. General Henry believes that Blackhawk has decided to make a run for it and is trying to cross Mississippi before he is caught. General Henry and Colonel Dodge are out one day's march behind Blackhawk and hope to close the gap soon by forced marches. The troops are all excited and are spoiling for a fight. I've never seen the men so eager for a battle.
Ah, that settles it then. We'll break camp at dawn tomorrow and march to the new fort at Blue Mounds west of the Four Lakes country. There we'll join with Henry and Dodge. You'll alert the men that we'll break camp at dawn. Captain, I'd like you to stay here and take command of this fort.
Yes, sir. I will begin preparations at once, General.
Excellent. Thank you. Gentlemen, thank you for your news. You're dismissed. And Johnson, I think I'll dictate that letter now.
Okay, I'm ready, sir.
To General Winfield Scott, Fort Dearborn, Chicago.
I went too far, too.
General, I have the honor of receiving your letter of July 10th, and I was shocked to learn of the outbreak of Asiatic cholera. I fear that, as a result, it may be some time before you're able to take the field. Whilst lying here awaiting provisions, I have thrown up a strong blockade work flanked by 4 blockhouses for the security of our provisions and the accommodation of the sick. I've named the fort Fort Kashkanan after a large lake nearby. We are making every effort to locate Blackhawk.
The next morning, General Atkinson and the troops moved out and headed west for Blue Mounds, marching all day in a heavy, cold rain. Meanwhile, General Henry and Colonel Dodge's troops were closing the gap on Blackhawk's warriors. The fact that the 2 officers had not obeyed General Atkinson's order to return at once was the turning point of the war. They had left Fort Winnebago and marched east over difficult terrain to the southern area of Horicon Marsh, near the present city of Eustisford. This is where they discovered Blackhawk's fresh trail. The troops had discarded all their bulky equipment in order to make better time. Baggage wagons, camp equipment, tents and blankets were left behind. Provisions were tightly packed on shoulders, and then over creeks, mires, through groves, thickets, and forests, the chase began. They began marching south from Eustisford along the Rock River to a point believed to be just north of the present city of Jefferson, where Blackhawk's trail suddenly turned west toward Rock Lake. A fearful storm arose that first day and continued all night and into the next morning. Though wet and chilled to the bone, the men cheerfully pushed forward, covering 50 miles by nightfall, camping somewhere near Aztalan. No fires could be built to cook supper, so the troops ate raw meat and raw dough, mixed with flour and water. The men, exhausted but uncomplaining, slept on the wet ground without blankets. The next day, July 20th, the troops continued the exhausting march through the rain, mud, and water, camping that night on the soggy ground between the 3rd and 4th Lakes, now the site of the city of Madison. For the first time, fires could be made and a substantial supper was cooked. The morning of July 21st, the Army broke camp early and moved west toward the Wisconsin River. The sight of discarded Indian equipment excited the men, but the fast pace was hard on the horses, and by noon, 40 or 50 of them gave out. By 3 o'clock, advance scouts reported Blackhawk's warriors had reached the bluffs of the Wisconsin River just south of what is now Sauk City. The troops increased their speed, and soon the rear guard of Blackhawk's forces was overtaken.
At this point, Chief Blackhawk made a brilliant military decision. He realized he had to stall for time in order to allow the old men, squaws, and children in his party time to cross to the island and the river. He knew there were Winnebago canoes and rafts hidden on the island, and that during the night, some of his people could paddle down the Wisconsin River to safety, if only he had time to transport his people to the island. Now Blackhawk revealed why he was a great Sauk war chief. He picked 40 or 50 of his best braves and told them his plan, that they were to take cover and fight off the troops as long as they could, to allow the others time to be transported to the island. The hand-picked warriors, proud of being chosen, took their battle stations, hiding in the tall grass, behind logs or tree stumps, and commenced firing. Blackhawk moved along his line of warriors, shouting words of encouragement to them and firing at the enemy as he went along. As the fighting wore on, the old men, women, and children were being hastily transported out to the island by canoes and rafts. For some time, this heroic little band of warriors, firing from behind trees and bushes, made the militia believe they were a much larger force. They were able to hold off the hundreds of General Henry's and Colonel Dodge's militia that earlier were so eager for a fight. Blackhawk continued to move up and down his front line of braves, spurring them on. Finally, the overwhelming number of militia arrayed against them forced the Indians to retreat slowly down the ravines toward the riverbanks. As it grew dark, the militia, for some reason, ceased their attack, much to the surprise of Blackhawk, who had feared the white troops would press their attack into the night and spoil his plan. So Blackhawk's strategy had worked. With 40 or 50 braves and outnumbered 20 to 1, he had been able to hold off the entire militia and allow time to move his people to the safety of the island. Many years later, Jefferson Davis called this the most brilliant exhibition of military tactics of which he had ever heard. That night, many of Blackhawk's people left in canoes and rafts and headed down the Wisconsin River to what they hoped would be safety, only to be met at the mouth of the river by the troops from Fort Crawford at Prairie du Chien. And most of the Indians were either shot or drowned or taken prisoner as they tried to get away. During the night, the troops in General Henry's camp at Wisconsin Heights heard the voice of an Indian calling from a neighboring hill. Later, it was learned that it was Blackhawk's Winnebago assistant, Neopope, calling for peace. Had the message been understood, the war might have ended at that point. Seeing that the troops did not understand the plea for surrender, Blackhawk and those remaining on the island decided that night to cross to the west side of the river and head overland to the Mississippi. Being low on provisions, the troops were forced to discontinue the fight and headed south to the Blue Mounds to meet General Atkinson and the others to get fresh supplies.
When General Henry and Colonel Dodge arrived at Blue Mounds on July 24th, they found General Atkinson's troops had arrived there earlier in the day. A great reunion was held among the troops, but a coolness was felt by General Henry and Colonel Dodge for having disobeyed orders at Fort Winnebago when they went chasing Blackhawk instead of returning to Fort Koshkonong with fresh supplies. The scene opens at Blue Mounds with General Atkinson greeting General Henry and Colonel Dodge as they arrive fresh from their battle at Wisconsin Heights.
General Henry and Colonel Dodge reporting, sir.
Well, gentlemen, I trust you have good news to report, since you chose to ignore my order of July 10th.
Sir, we fully realize how you must feel.
Do you?
But we decided that had you been there, you would have wanted us to catch up with Blackhawk and draw him into battle. Well, sir, we did, and we caught up to him 3 days ago.
You actually had a battle with Blackhawk?
Yes, sir.
What happened?
We caught up with the Indians opposite the old Sauk village, near the Wisconsin River north of here. After following him nearly 100 miles, Blackhawk and his braves put up quite a stand. They must have had several hundred warriors firing down on us from the bluffs overlooking the river. But then our boys drove them to cover down along the river bottom.
Good.
Then darkness forced us to break off the battle.
We had 1 man killed and 8 wounded, sir. And judging by the scalps taken by our Winnebagos and those taken by our boys, we must have killed at least 40 of the Sauk. But I don't know how many we wounded, sir, but it must have been plenty.
But where is Blackhawk now? Why did you leave the scene of a battle without a complete victory?
Sir, by that time we were getting dang low on supplies, so we decided to meet you here back at Blue Mounds, resupply and renew the chase. It won't be hard to follow them. They have so many dying and wounded that they're leaving bodies and equipment all along the trail.
We crossed the river and followed the Indians towards the Mississippi through some mighty rough and hilly country.
Okay, this is our last chance, gentlemen. We've got to get Blackhawk before he crosses the Mississippi. Did they tell you? President Jackson thinks it's taking us too long to catch Blackhawk. So he has sent Winfield Scott and 9 companies of regular troops all the way from Virginia to replace us. Think of it, gentlemen.
Sir, they don't realize what a vast wilderness that it is out here, how the Indians can just disappear into the forest and are difficult to track down.
That may be. But Scott and his troops are in Chicago now. An epidemic of cholera broke out, so they'll be detained. But Scott will be catching up with us. Whatever it takes, we've got to get Blackhawk. Now, resupply your troops. We've plenty of fresh supplies now. We have simply got to get Blackhawk before he crosses the Mississippi.
Yes, sir. Let's see, Dodge. We should be ready to cross the Wisconsin River on the 27th. Altogether, we have over 3,000 men, most of them mounted on horseback. That'll be quite a ferrying operation, crossing the river with 3,000 troops and hundreds of horses, plus all of our supplies.
Right, we'll have a great many rafts to build out of whatever logs and planks we can find. The horses we can swim across, and we can use those old abandoned cabins we saw near Helena for the logs.
Excellent. What is this?
Good idea. General Atkinson?
Yes, Johnson?
This Indian says he had an important message for you, sir.
Well, have him come here. Who are you? What do you want?
I am White Crow. I've come to claim the reward for the 2 white girls.
You have the 2 Hall girls.
Yes.
Are they all right?
Yes, they are fine. Do you have the reward? Will you pay me now?
We'll pay you in horses when you bring the girls here, unharmed.
Oh! They'll bring the 2 girls into camp now. You may go get the reward.
Very well. Gentlemen, will you entertain our guest?
What do you know about Blackhawk?
We heard that he had crossed the Wisconsin River on his way to the Father of Waters. His people were very sick and starving.
They'll be a lot sicker when we catch up to him.
I'm ready. You'd better have the girls here soon, unharmed.
Oh, thank God! We're safe and live! Is it really true? I can't believe it. See, Rachel, I told you our prayers would be answered. I was so afraid we'd never see a white man again. Never see our friends again.
Well, you seem to be safe and among your own people. But tell me, are you all right? Did the Potawatomi harm you in any way?
We're fine, just fine. Just kind of scared, I guess. I'm not scared anymore, but I sure am hungry. Yes, hungry and tired.
Well, we can have that taken care of in no time. Lieutenant Johnston, please have some food brought for the girls at once.
Yes, sir.
And, gentlemen, would you talk with the ladies while I finish my dealings with Spotted Arm? Perhaps you could sit over here.
All right.
Spotted Arm. Excuse me.
Go ahead.
This paper is an order. Take it to General Street at Fort Crawford. Give it to him. He will give you 40 horses and other supplies. And tell your people that White Beaver thanks them for not harming the white girl. You may go now.
My thanks to you, White Beaver. General Street is a good man. He will not cheat us. We will go now.
Very good. Now then, young ladies, tell me, which of you is Sylvia and which is Rachel?
I'm Sylvia, and I'm Rachel.
And how old are you, if you don't mind telling me?
I'm the oldest. I'm 17. And I'm 15.
Plenty young enough for what you've been through. Now, we've all heard rumors about what happened at Indian Creek, and I know it's going to be unpleasant for you, but it would help us a great deal if you could tell us what actually occurred.
Oh, must we talk about it? It's such a terrible nightmare. Oh, I wish I could just wake up and find out that it was all just a bad dream.
Sir, perhaps we should wait until later after they've had a chance to relax a little.
No, I'm sorry, General. We're going to be busy making preparations to cross the river. We've got to finish this interview now.
It's all right, Rachel. I'll tell them about it. It's important that they know the facts.
Thank you. I'm glad you understand. You know, the more facts we have, the sooner we can drive the Indian off of our territory and have peace and quiet on the frontier.
It was awful for Rachel. She and Mama were so close.
I understand. But tell me, when did the Indians attack?
It was about May 20th. Our farm is, or was, about 12 miles north of Ottawa, Illinois. Mama and Papa had taken us over to the neighbors, William Davis, the blacksmith. He also had a large family, and several of the other neighbors were there too. You see, there had been rumors of an Indian attack in our area, and everyone thought it would be safer if we kept together.
Yes, that's very true. There's safety in numbers.
But General, it didn't help at all. All of a sudden, we were surrounded by Indians. They were all over the farmyard, and they had guns and tomahawks. It was horrible.
Mr. Pettigrew leapt to the front door of the cabin and tried to close it, but before he was able to, there was a terrible blast, and he crumpled to the floor. Mrs. Pettigrew threw open the door and ran out into the yard, screaming, "Johnny! Johnny!"
Johnny was her little boy. He was so beautiful. He was only 3 years old, and he could recite all the letters of the alphabet.
Johnny had been playing with his dog in the front yard. Just as Mrs. Pettigrew reached him and was about to pick him up, the Indians shot her, and she fell at Johnny's feet.
Then they dragged us all out in the front yard. And one of the Indians picked up little Johnny by the feet, and
oh, it was horrible. All that blood. Poor Johnny. I can't tell you what they did.
Then 2 more Indians took the blacksmith's son, little Billy Davis, and held his little hands while another Indian shot him in the head.
Then I heard a groan, and I turned to see my own father lying under the oak tree that we used to swing from. His shirt was all covered with blood, and there was an arrow through his chest.
It was frightful, horrible, so much blood everywhere, and everyone screaming and shouting. But Mr. Davis showed them all right.
Yes, it was incredible to watch. Mr. Davis was a very powerful man. He was the blacksmith. He stood alone in the middle of the yard, yelling at the Indians to leave the children alone and come after him. He was swinging the butt of his rifle around like a club. He killed 7 or 8 Indians before they finally overwhelmed him and killed him too.
Everywhere I looked in the yard, people were being killed. It was as if the whole world had suddenly gone mad. I was sure any second I would be next. Then I felt a hand on my neck. I was petrified with fear. I turned slowly and saw with joy that it was our young Indian friends, Tokumi and Komi, who often came to visit us at our farm. Tokumi smiled and whispered, "Be still and follow us, quickly."
We ran off into the woods with them to where they had horses tied up. They gave each of us a horse, and we rode for miles and miles, till we met another large group of Indians. And then we rode again for hours without talking.
That night, Tokumi told us that he was sorry that the Potawatomi had killed our family and friends. That it was a plot to create trouble for Blackhawk.
Yes, it was the Potawatomi, not Blackhawk, who captured us.
They knew that the white settlers would blame Blackhawk for the massacre and would be out to get him. Komi told us that it was only with great difficulty that they convinced the chiefs not to kill us along with the rest of our family.
Let's see, we rode day after day until we had no idea where we were. Usually the Indians were quite good to us, but we were always frightened, especially after the second day. That was a day we will never forget.
Yes, I could see that scene like it was right here. That morning, after breakfast, the Potawatomi cleared a large area and in the center placed a pole about 25 feet high. And around the pole, they put about 20 spears. And on the spears, they put the scalps of our murdered friends and family. We saw our own dear fathers and mothers and the Pettigrews and the others. And then they stuck several hearts on separate spears. It was horrible.
And then they came over to us. We were terrified. They grabbed us, and they painted half of our faces and heads red, and the other half black. Then they started dancing around us and jabbing spears into the ground near us. We thought at any moment they were going to kill us.
We were almost afraid to breathe. But after about a half an hour, the ceremony ended as abruptly as it had started.
It was just about that time that the Indians gave us new dresses to wear, these that we have on now. They tried to get us to throw away our shoes and wear moccasins, but we wouldn't do it.
After that, they were quite good to us, but we never knew when they might turn on us. I can't tell you the terror we felt.
By the gods, sir, I say it's time we showed those Indians a thing or two. Whether they're Potawatomi, Sauk, or Kickapoo, we have to protect our settlers and keep peace on the frontier. Those savages can't be allowed to stand in the way of progress. These are our lands now, and we've got the treaties to prove it.
If only Blackhawk had accepted defeat, as Keokuk did, and had moved west. Ladies, I see they're bringing your food now.
Oh, I'm starved. It's been so long since we've had a good meal.
Well, I'm curious, what kind of food did those savages give you to eat?
Well, it certainly wouldn't have been good for someone with a delicate stomach. Let's see. Sometimes it was dried acorns or roasted potatoes and corn that they pounded into a type of soup. Rachel and I were surprised to see that they made coffee. They boiled it in a copper kettle.
And don't forget the pickled pork. Well, we hoped it was pork. And we also had some bread and even some broiled venison.
Well, we're going to be busy making preparations now, ladies. I want to thank you very much for sharing this story with us. It's helped us a great deal. We're very pleased you're safe, too.
We want to thank you very much for your kindness and understanding. We are so fortunate to be here.
God bless you, girls. Enjoy your safety and freedom. General, we should go on with our planning. Enjoy your food, ladies. How much powder and shot do you think you're going to need?
Sir, we'll need at least 10 rounds.
Early on the morning of July 26th, the troops began crossing the Wisconsin River at Helena, near where Spring Green is today. They tore down old cabins for planks and felled trees to make rafts. It took the Army 2 days to cross the river. This gave the Indians a 5-day start in their race for the Mississippi. On the 28th, the troops, marching briskly, soon picked up Blackhawk's trail. It was clearly pointed out now by large flocks of buzzards and crows feasting on the dead bodies of Indians and their ponies. The trail was the most difficult of the campaign. The troops complained of heavy underbrush, steep bluffs, dark and marshy valleys, and poor grass for the horses, not to mention the hordes of pesky mosquitoes. After 2 days, they crossed the Kickapoo River, near where Soldiers' Grove is today. Marching until late in the evening on August 1st, the Army reached Blackhawk's camp of the previous day. General Atkinson hoped to overtake the Indians the next day, August 2nd, so he set marching time for 2 o'clock in the morning. The Army and Colonel Dodge's battalion led the chase. They were now near where the Bad Axe River empties into the Mississippi, 20 miles south of La Crosse. Out on the river, the steamboat Warrior is on its way back down to Fort Crawford. It had been sent up the river to Chief Wabashaw's village on the west side to warn the old Sioux warrior that his enemy, Chief Blackhawk, might be attempting to cross the river. The steamboat has a detachment of troops on board and a 6-pound cannon mounted on the foredeck.
Blackhawk's people are preparing to cross the Mississippi in canoes and rafts. We join Blackhawk now as he and hundreds of his pitiful band are gathered at the water's edge, planning the river crossing. Blackhawk and his braves are on the shore directing the loading of rafts.
Father, our people need many more canoes than this to cross the great Father of Waters. There's not much time left for us. White Beaver's army will surely be here soon. Our scouts have seen their dust in the morning sky.
Be sure the women and little children cross first. They must cross the great Father of Waters and join with Keokuk.
Great Chief, look! Out there in the water. White man's big boat coming this way.
It is good. I know that boat. It is called the Warrior. Put down your guns. I know the captain of that boat. His name is Throckmorton. Now we can signal him to come on board so we can surrender. Make a white flag of truce. Now our women and children will be safe. Hold your fire!
Say, Jim, do you reckon we'll ever have a chance to fire these guns at anything? Seems like all we ever do is get orders to clean them, but never to fire them.
That's about right, Joe. At least we aren't getting shot at.
I wouldn't worry about that. Remember what Throckmorton said. He said Blackhawk is going to be crossing the river up by the mouth of the Bad Axe River.
Yeah, but maybe that's just another rumor, like all the rest.
I think we'll find out mighty sudden-like, because that's the mouth of the Bad Axe right over there past that little island.
Which island? This part of the river's full of islands. Old Blackhawk sure would be smart to pick this place to cross.
Look sharp, man. We're getting close to the spot where Blackhawk is supposed to be heading. See if you can spot any Indians along them banks. Get your muskets loaded, get that 6-pounder loaded with canister shot.
Look! They're on the shore! In that little clump of birch trees! Indians! Lord of Moses, there's sure are a lot of them!
Say, Joe, I don't know about you, but I'm scared. I never shot an Indian before. Fact is, I never shot anything meaner than a rabbit.
Well, when the bullets start flying, the least thing you'll be thinking about is being scared. I'm going to get myself an Indian or two today, or if my name ain't Jed Hawkins.
See, Captain, there they are, under that little clump of birches.
Yeah, that could be Blackhawk and his band, all right. All right, make sure you have plenty of ammunition. Get ready, boys. Things could get pretty hot now.
Say, what's that crazy Indian doing out there? He's wading in the water and he's holding something on a long pole.
Why, sure, that's a white flag he's carrying. Look, he's waving it. What do you know? I think they want to surrender.
Hey, wait. They're shouting something. Listen.
Send that Indian interpreter to me at once.
Captain, he wants us to send a boat ashore. The chief wants to surrender.
Ask them if they are Sauk's or Winnebagos.
Kamasak, no Winnebago.
Maka, Osawa, Manaka Kanawa, Owa Mikina.
They say they are Sox, and again, they want to surrender.
Hope they don't think we're going to fall for that. We're a little too old to fall for that old Indian trick.
I think they're loading rifles. Let's get out of here.
Get ready, men. Let them have it. Aim that 6-pounder right in the middle of them.
Look. I thought you said he was your friend. They're loading that cannon. They're aiming it this way. Get down! Get down!
Fire!
Father, why did they kill our people? We waved them our white flag. If we are to fight, we are too few. If we are to die, we are too many. We tried to surrender. Why do they kill our people?
Only the white man can tell you why he fires on a white flag of truce. 3 times I've tried to surrender to the Bluecoats. Now let them see that Sauks know how to fight and how to die. Load your guns! When I lower this lance, let every bullet find its mark!
Fire!
Captain, we're running low on firewood for the boiler. We better head back to Prairie du Chien before it gets too dark.
Doggone it! Just when we were having a good little scrap, then we have to leave. Very well, then, we'll break off for now and withdraw.
Aw, come on.
Stop firing! Up anchor! We have to head back to Prairie du Chien. I'm sorry, boys. We're running low on firewood. We gotta get back to Fort Crawford before dark. You lads did very well today. I'm proud of you. We must have gotten a couple of dozen of them red devils and wounded twice as many. We didn't lose a single man. Now that's what I call a good little scrap.
It is good The boat is leaving. Now our people will be safe. Hear me now, my people. Our cause is just, but the white man has too many troops, too many guns. So you must leave now and cross the Father of Wide Waters and join with our chiefs in Iowa country. My son, the prophet, and I will leave you for a few days and go to Chippewa country. You have suffered enough. May the great Manitou bless you. Blackhawk is sad for his people. Farewell.
So, as the steamboat called the Warrior cruised down the river to Prairie du Chien to get more wood for her boiler, Blackhawk left his people on the riverbanks and headed northeast for the Wisconsin Dells country. Early the next morning, an Indian runner overtook Blackhawk and told him that his people were trying to cross the Mississippi. But General Atkinson's army was within a few miles of them, and they would be trapped. Blackhawk decided to return to his people and die with them if necessary. When Blackhawk arrived, he saw the trail his people had made to the left, heading down the Bad Axe River. He had about 20 of his braves drag wet blankets over the sand, making a fresh trail to the right. His plan worked. The advanced troops coming on the trail headed to the right, and Blackhawk and his handful of braves hid in the heavy brush and fought a delaying action, gradually retreating and giving time for more of his people to attempt crossing the river. This action cut Blackhawk off from the main body of his people, and he could not see what was happening to his tribe. However, General Henry's troops arriving on the scene weren't fooled. They did not turn to the right, but headed to the left, down the Bad Axe River, where they soon came upon Blackhawk's struggling people. The Indians again tried to surrender, but the angry, excited troops ignored them and commenced firing. So the Indians determined to sell their lives dearly. After a violent gun battle, General Henry ordered a bayonet charge, and the surviving braves, women, and children were driven right out into the Mississippi and on to a small island. Many women tried to swim across the river with children clinging to their backs or holding a child in their teeth. Many were drowned or shot trying to cross. The troops charged onto the island, and every Indian was either killed or driven off into the water. About 150 were killed on the east bank, and at least as many more drowned. Unfortunately for the Indians at this time, the steamboat Warrior reappeared on the scene. And Captain Throckmorton proudly reported later that his men shot so many Indians in the water that the Mississippi blushed red. Blackhawk, his sons, and the prophet White Cloud stayed in La Crosse for several days. It was there that they decided it was useless to go on fighting, so they traveled to Fort Crawford at Prairie du Chien, escorted by 2 Winnebago Indians, where they surrendered to Colonel Zachary Taylor, the commander of Fort Crawford. Old Rough and Ready Taylor, as the troops called him, had a bitter confrontation with Blackhawk. He ordered his lieutenant, Jefferson Davis, to throw Blackhawk and the other Indians on a steamboat and escort them down the Mississippi. When a cholera epidemic prevented the prisoners from docking at Rock Island on September 10th, Lieutenant Davis was forced to take them further down, south of St. Louis, to Jefferson Barracks, where, as fate would have it, the post commander was none other than Blackhawk's old adversary, General Henry Atkinson. It was here, as a prisoner of the United States, that Blackhawk suffered his greatest humiliation. Locked behind bars, he was forced by General Atkinson to wear a ball and chain, an animal trapped for the bounty on his hide.
Peaceful and noble Father Flood, they tinge thy waters with their blood, yet thou roll'st on majestic as before, when those pursuing are no more. Finally able their fears to release, here grows and blooms the tree of sacred peace. The earth no longer drinks their blood. For this give thanks to God above. Live, O illustrious chieftain Blackhawk, the bravest, last, and noblest of song. You live in hearts of your people, now free. Live on in our memory. You live in hearts of your people, now free. Live on in our history.
When Blackhawk was in prison, he decided to dictate his autobiography to an interpreter in order that the story of his people's valiant struggle could be handed down white man style as recorded history. That autobiography was to become one of the greatest resources for the writing of this drama. While he was a prisoner, Blackhawk attempted many times to have himself brought before General Atkinson, but to no avail. Because there was much he wanted to tell the general, he dedicated his book to him, General Henry Atkinson, his former enemy, proving once again the valiant nature of the old Sauk. When on December 28, 1832, the general ordered his aides to bring the prisoner before him, Blackhawk finally met him face to face. When Blackhawk speaks in this last scene, we will hear many of the words and thoughts he expressed so eloquently in the dedication of that book.
General, are you ready to receive the prisoner, Blackhawk?
Yes, have him sent to me at once.
Yes, sir.
Well, Blackhawk, for some time now you've been asking to see me. My interpreter has been sick. He's well now. What is it you wish to say?
You have taken me prisoner with all my warriors, and I am much grieved, for I had hoped if I could not defeat you, at least I could hold out much longer and give you much trouble. I tried to ambush you, but you understand Indian fighting.
Yes. Yes, and we have many men, and we have much in the way of supply.
I tried to rush you and fight you face to face. But your guns were well aimed. The bullets flew through the air like the birds and whizzed by our ears like the wind through the trees in winter. My warriors fell around me, and it looked dismal. The sun rose dimly in the morning, and at night it sank like a ball and looked like a ball of fire. That was the last sun that set on Blackhawk. Now he is a prisoner of the white man. But he is not afraid of torture. He is not afraid to die. Blackhawk is a sock. And he has done nothing of which a sock need be ashamed. He has fought his country's battle year after year against the white man who has come to rob his people of their land.
Now that is enough, Blackhawk. You are our prisoner now. However, the President of the United States and we do not wish you to suffer further. The President will see you. He will send for you to visit with him in Washington, D.C. You will go, you and the other chiefs, and you will pay homage to his high office. Do you understand?
Great Father, life's fortunes and the fortunes of war have made me your prisoner and you my conqueror. When my supplies were exhausted and my warriors could no longer fight, I had to surrender. I shake your hand and the hand of the President of the United States. And I ask you to tell the President that we wish now to have our chiefs released from their chains so that they can go back across the river and rejoin our women and children. We have been gone a long time, and we fear for their suffering. Great Father, my days upon this earth are numbered. I have suffered many moons, and I can no longer hope to live much longer. But I have this hope in my heart for you. Life is filled with many thorns and many brambles. And it is my hope, Great Father, that your United States of America never reduces you to my condition, so that you must crawl in the dust like a serpent. May the Great Spirit bless you. I say no more.
The prisoners spent a gloomy winter in Jefferson Barracks. However, in March 1833, General Atkinson received orders from Washington to send Blackhawk, White Cloud, and several of the other Indian prisoners to meet with President Andrew Jackson in the White House. As soon as the ice melted, the group boarded a steamboat and headed down the Mississippi to the Ohio River, then steamed eastward up that river, stopping at many cities along the way.
Everywhere the boat stopped, great crowds would gather to see the now famous Indians. Stories of Blackhawk's travels from city to city made front-page news. Where a year before on the frontier they had been feared and depicted as savage murderers, they were now welcomed as noble heroes and were given many gifts by their admirers.
At Wheeling, West Virginia, the party boarded a stagecoach and traveled the new National Road to Frederick, Maryland. Here, much to the utter amazement of Blackhawk and the others, with great apprehension, they boarded one of those new steam trains and arrived in Washington on April 22nd. On the way, the Indians would marvel at the astonishing things they saw. Large cities, a road being built through the mountains, railroads, canals, great sailing in steamships, and once they actually saw a man go up in the air in a gas-filled balloon. This, of course, was the whole purpose of the trip. President Jackson wanted to so impress Blackhawk and the other chiefs of the enormous power and the achievements of the white man that they would return to their village and tell people of the wondrous things they saw, and that it was useless to fight any longer.
Our epilogue scene opens as cheering crowds line the curbs of Pennsylvania Avenue in Washington, D.C. Blackhawk, White Cloud, and Whirling Thunder are approaching the White House in a handsome carriage. It is April 25th, 1833.
Mr. President, I have the honor of presenting to you the captives from our recent Indian campaign. First of all, I should like to present Whirling Thunder, eldest son of Chief Blackhawk. Then, sir, the Winnebago Prophet. It was he who advised Blackhawk on the recent war adventure. And then, sir, Chief Black Sparrow Hawk, my recent worthy opponent.
Chief Blackhawk, the President of the United States, your great father, is glad to welcome you here to Washington and your people. However, last year, your conduct on the frontier compelled me to send my troops against you and your people. And you were defeated. You suffered many great losses. I have asked you to come here to Washington for a special purpose. When you leave here, General Atkinson will conduct you through some of our great cities. You will see the strength of the white man. What can you do against us? You may kill a few women and children, but such a force would be sent against you as would destroy your whole tribe. Let the red men hunt and live at peace in the frontier. But I hope that never again will they raise their hands against their white brethren. When you go back, listen to the counsels of Keokuk and the other friendly chiefs. Bury the tomahawk, move west of the Mississippi, and live at peace in the frontier. Blackhawk, do you have anything to say in defense of your actions on the frontier last year?
I am a man. You are another. We did not hope to conquer the white man. No, he has too many lodges, too many warriors. I, for my part, took up the tomahawk in order to avenge grievances my people no longer could endure. Had I endured them longer, my people would have said, Blackhawk is a woman. He is too old to be a chief. He is no sock. But I will say no more of it. You know the story. Great Father, I come to tell you that we have buried the tomahawk. And from this time forward, the sound of the rifle will indicate only the killing of the deer and the buffalo. The white man's lodges are as numerous as the sands along the great lake that rolls nearby, and his warriors as the leaves on the trees. The red man has but few lodges and few warriors, but the red man has a heart that beats as warmly as the heart of his white brother. The great Manitou has given us our forests, and of all the animals who live there, his favorite is the deer, because its skin is white, and that is the emblem of peace. This hunting robe and these feathers of the eagle are white. Accept them as a gift from Blackhawk and his people. May the great Manitou watch over you. Rock River was a beautiful country. I loved my cornfields, my village, and the homeland of my people. And I fought for them.
Shenandoah, I long to see you. Away, you rolling river. Oh, Shenandoah, I long to see you. Away, we're bound to go across the wide Missouri. 'Tis 7 long years since last I've seen you. Away, rolling river. 'Tis 7 long years since last I've seen you. Away, we're bound to go across the wide Missouri. Peaceful and noble Father, fly sacred peace. The earth no longer drinks their blood. For this give thanks to God above. Live, O illustrious chieftain Blackhawk, the bravest, last, and noblest of song. You live in hearts of your people, now free. Live on in our